Burna, the greatest smoker of Olokun village. In the bustling village of Olokun, nestled deep in the heart of Africa, there lived a man named Burna Man. Burna Man was known far and wide for two things: his impressive musical talent that made him a star across the continent, and his insatiable appetite for cigarettes. The man smoked so much that he single-handedly kept the tobacco farmers in business and was personally responsible for global warming in the village. Take a moment to subscribe and follow my handles at Health Folklore on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Please like and comment. Okay, back to my story. Burna's house was easy to spot. It was the one with a perpetual cloud of smoke hovering above it, like a halo for a very naughty angel. The local weather forecasters had added partly Burna with a chance of lung cancer to their daily reports. His girlfriend, Folake, often complained that living with him was like being trapped in a never-ending forest fire. She'd wave her arms dramatically, coughing and sputtering. "Burna! Your smoking is going to kill us all before the gods have a chance to collect us." But Burna would just laugh, a deep, rumbling sound setting off another coughing fit that sounded like a choking elephant. "Nonsense, woman," he'd wheeze. "These little sticks are harmless. They're just dried leaves. How can leaves hurt anyone?" He then proceeded to eat a salad to prove his point, only to choke on a particularly rebellious piece of lettuce. Little did Burna know those harmless sticks contained over 7,000 chemicals, many of them toxic, and at least 70 known to cause cancer. But our friend Burna was not one for reading health pamphlets or listening to village gossip about the dangers of smoking. No, he was too busy trying to set the world record for the most cigarettes smoked in a single day. His current personal best was 250, a feat that left him looking like a very satisfied chimney and sounding like his friend Aseki. One fateful morning, as Burna sat outside his hut, puffing away on his beloved cigarettes, the village's most respected elder, Abiola Tinubu, approached him. Tinubu was ancient, his skin wrinkled like a dried mango, but his eyes sparkled with wisdom and political cunning. He was so old, rumor had it he once shared palm wine with Oduduwa himself. "Burna, my son," Tinubu called out, waving his hand to disperse the cloud of smoke surrounding the younger man. "I have come to tell you a story about the great god Orunmila and his battle with the demon of smoke." He paused to hack out a lung, courtesy of the second-hand smoke. "But first, do you mind if I bum a cigarette? This politicking is thirsty work." Burna Man, always up for a good story, especially if he could smoke through it, nodded eagerly. "Tell me, elder, but make it quick. I'm down to my last carton of cigarettes, and I need to make a run to the trading post soon." Tinubu settled himself on a nearby stool, his bones creaking like the suspension of a worn-out Danfo bus. "Long ago," he began, "when the world was young and the gods walked among us, there was a terrible demon known as Ajantala, the demon of smoke. Ajantala was a crafty creature who sought to weaken humans by tricking them into inhaling his poisonous breath." Burna snorted, sending a plume of smoke out of his nostrils like an irritated dragon who'd just eaten a plate of pepper soup. "Sounds like my kind of demon." Tinubu ignored him and continued. "Ajantala created small sticks filled with dried leaves and convinced humans they were magical tokens of wisdom and pleasure. But in truth, each stick was a tiny portal through which Ajantala could spread his toxic influence." As Tinubu spoke, Burna felt a strange tickle in his throat. He coughed, trying to clear it, but the sensation persisted. It felt like he'd swallowed a handful of Cameroon pepper. "The humans who used these sticks began to change," Tinubu went on. "Their lungs blackened like overcooked jollof rice. Their breath became foul, like the back end of a malfunctioning sewage system. And worst of all, they found themselves enslaved to Ajantala's sticks, unable to go even a few hours without sucking on them like newborn babes on their mother's breasts." Burna shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very aware of the cigarette dangling from his lips. Orunmila, the god of wisdom, saw what was happening and decided to intervene. He approached one of Ajantala's victims, a man not unlike yourself, Burna. The elder's eyes twinkled knowingly. This man's name was Akin, and he smoked so much that his wife had threatened to leave him for a man who didn't taste like the wrong end of a chimney when she kissed him. Burna girlfriend Folake, who had been eavesdropping from inside the hut, let out a loud "Amen" at this, causing Burna to scowl. Tinubu chuckled before continuing. Orunmila disguised himself as a humble healer and offered to show Akin the truth about Ajantala's sticks. He took Akin on a magical journey inside his own body. At this point, Burna was so engrossed in the story that he didn't notice his cigarette had gone out. The elder's words painted vivid pictures in his mind. First, they traveled to Akin's lungs. Oh, what a sorry sight they were. Once pink and healthy, they now resembled two shriveled, blackened gourds. "See how Ajantala's smoke has poisoned your breath bags?" Orunmila said. "Each time you inhale his toxic fumes, you invite death to make its home in your chest." Burna unconsciously rubbed his chest, feeling a tightness he'd never noticed before. Next, they journeyed to Akin's heart. The once strong organ was laboring like an old donkey, struggling to pump blood through veins clogged with the residue of Ajantala's evil. "Your heart weeps, my son," Orunmila explained. "It was meant to beat strong for many years, but Ajantala's poison has aged it beyond its time." Tinubu paused, fixing Burna with a penetrating stare. "Did you know, Burna, that smoking damages blood vessels and increases the risk of heart disease and stroke? It's like inviting a herd of elephants to rampage through your body's delicate waterways." Burna gulped, his hand shaking slightly as he reached for another cigarette. But before he could light it, the elder continued his tale. Orunmila then took Akin to his liver, his kidneys, and even to the very essence of his manhood. At this, Tinubu lowered his voice conspiratorially. "Let's just say, Akin was not performing his husbandly duties as vigorously as he once had. Ajantala's smoke had wilted his big cucumber, or gbola as we call it if you catch my meaning. Simply put, he is a vegetable on the bed. Akin's cucumber now has low self-esteem." Burna's eyes widened in horror. He discreetly glanced down at his lap, as if checking to make sure everything was still in working order. His cucumber was his pride. As you are enjoying this story, kindly take a moment to subscribe and follow my handles at Health Folklore on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Please like and comment. Okay, back to my story. By the end of the journey, Akin was a changed man. He saw the truth of Ajantala's deception and vowed to quit smoking, but it wasn't easy. Ajantala's hold was strong, and Akin struggled mightily. "What did he do?" Burna asked, completely forgetting about his unlit cigarette. "Ah, that's where the real battle began," Tinubu said with a nod. "Orunmila taught Akin that to defeat Ajantala, he needed weapons, which are knowledge, willpower, and support. He learned about the 7,000 chemicals in each of Ajantala's sticks, many of them more toxic than the venom of a black mamba. He discovered that the pleasant feelings he got from smoking were actually the demon's chains being loosened slightly, only to be tightened again when the effects wore off. He also understood its strong pull, which the Englishman called addiction." Burna listened, rapt with attention as the elder described Akin's struggles and triumphs. How he battled mood swings fiercer than a wounded lion, cravings that gnawed at him like a hungry hyena, and the temptation to give in that whispered to him sweeter than a lover's promise. "But Akin persevered," Tinubu declared proudly. "And do you know what happened, Burna?" Burna shook his head, leaning forward eagerly. Within just 20 minutes of smoking his last stick, Akin's heart rate and blood pressure began to drop, like a tense warrior finally laying down his spear. After 12 hours, the carbon monoxide in his blood, Ajantala's poisonous breath, returned to normal levels. His body began to heal itself, slowly but surely driving out the demon's influence. Tinubu's voice took on a tone of wonder. 2 weeks later, Akin found he could climb the hill to the village square without sounding like a warthog in labor. After a month, the constant cough that had plagued him disappeared, and food began to taste better than it had in years. His wife no longer complained about kissing an ashtray, and their nights became much more interesting. His cucumber was firing in all cylinders like a new V8 engine. The old man wiggled his eyebrows suggestively, causing Burna to blush. But the most amazing change came after a year, he continued. Orunmila visited Akin again and took him on another journey through his body. His lungs, once black and shriveled, had begun to pink up like the sky at dawn. His heart was stronger, the clogged rivers of his veins clearing like a stream after the rainy season. Orunmila told him that his risk of heart disease was now half of what it had been when he was Ajantala's slave. Burna sat in stunned silence, the forgotten cigarette falling from his fingers. Akin lived many more years, Tinubu said softly. He saw his children grow, held his grandchildren, and even danced at his great-grandchild's naming ceremony. All because he found the strength to break free from Ajantala's grasp. As Tinubu's tale came to an end, a commotion broke out in the village square. A crowd had gathered around a newcomer, a man wearing a bright white coat that gleamed in the African sun. "Who is that?" Burna man asked, squinting at the stranger. Tinubu smiled mysteriously. "Ah, that is Dr. Nchebe. He has come from the big city to teach our people about the dangers of smoking. A man of science, he calls himself. But between you and me," the elder leaned in close, his eyes twinkling, "I think Orunmila works in mysterious ways."
Curious, Burna heaved himself up and walked towards the growing crowd, Tinubu following at a more sedate pace. As they got closer, they could hear Dr. Oladel's voice, clear and authoritative. "My friends," the doctor was saying, "I've come to talk to you about a serious threat to our health and well-being." The doctor went on to explain the various health risks of smoking, his words eerily echoing the story Tinubu had just told. He spoke of lung cancer, heart disease, stroke, and respiratory problems. He explained how smoking could lead to erectile dysfunction in men and fertility issues in women. "And it's not just smokers who are at risk," Dr. Oladel continued. "Secondhand smoke, the smoke exhaled by smokers and from the burning end of a cigarette, poses serious health risks to non-smokers too. It can cause lung cancer and heart disease in adults. And in children, it can lead to respiratory infections, severe asthma, and even sudden infant death syndrome." Burna frowned. Had he been putting everyone around him, including his family, at risk all this time? But then Dr. Oladel's tone changed, becoming more optimistic. "However, it's never too late to quit. Your body begins to heal itself almost immediately after your last cigarette, and the benefits continue to accumulate over time." The doctor went on to describe the various strategies for quitting, from nicotine replacement therapy to prescription medications, from behavioral therapy to lifestyle changes. He emphasized the importance of a strong support system, family, friends, and healthcare providers who could offer encouragement and accountability. "Doctor," Burna said, his voice ringing out across the suddenly silent village square, "I am Burna man, and I have been a slave to these demon sticks for too long. Today, I break free. Will you help me?" A cheer went up from the crowd. Folik rushed forward, tears in her eyes, and embraced him. "My friend," the doctor said warmly, "you've taken the first and most important step. Of course I'll help you. And I have a feeling," he added, glancing at the supportive crowd, "that you'll have the backing of your entire village and your fans across Africa." As the sun began to set on Olokun village, casting a golden glow over the scene, Burna felt a newfound sense of freedom. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult. Ajantala's hold wouldn't be easy to break, but he was ready for the challenge. He took a deep breath, savoring the clean air, only to start coughing uncontrollably. "Oh, right," he wheezed. "I forgot what clean air feels like. It's so spicy. Is this what they call oxygen?" In the years that followed, Burna became known not just for his music, but as a passionate advocate for tobacco control, sharing his story with fans across the continent. Though he sometimes still felt the temptation of Ajantala's tricks, he stood firm, knowing that every smoke-free day was a victory, not just for him, but for his family, his fans, and his community. He even released a hit single called "I Left My Lungs in Olokun Village, But Found My Voice," which topped the charts for weeks and became the unofficial anthem for Nigeria's anti-smoking campaign. And so, my friends, remember the tale of Burna and the demon of smoke. For in every puff of a cigarette lurks Ajantala, waiting to ensnare you. But fear not, for with the power of laughter and the wisdom of great grand elders like Abiola Tinubu, you too can tell that sneaky demon to go smoke himself. Don't leave without clicking subscribe and follow. At Health Folklore, like, comment, and click the notification button for the next story.